I now have the distinct honor of introducing today's featured speaker. As Amy mentioned at the start of our program, Ambassador Marcial was unable to be with us this afternoon. He did, however, nominate his close advisor, Mr. James Carouso, to stand in and deliver his remarks. Mr. James Carouso is Counselor for Economic Affairs at the United States Embassy in Jakarta, Indonesia. Following a 14-year career in banking and finance where he specialized in trade finance, Mr. Carouso joined the U.S. Department of State in 1995. He has served in the Dominican Republic, South Africa, Australia, Thailand, and Cyprus, and is currently the Counselor for Economic Affairs in Jakarta. Mr. Carouso was part of the U.S. Free Trade Agreement negotiating teams with Australia and Thailand. He holds degrees from Hamilton College and the American Graduate School of International Management. Now, before inviting Mr. Carouso to the stage, Ambassador Marcial was also kind enough to record a short video for everyone today. So let's play this video first.
Hi, I'm Scott Marcial, the U.S. Ambassador to Indonesia. I'm very sorry that I won't be able to join you today. I'd really been looking forward to coming to St. Louis and meeting with you all. But I'm very pleased that Jim Carouso, our economic counselor, will be there speaking with you today. Jim's terrific. He knows Indonesia and the business environment here as well as anyone, and I think you'll find it very useful. I'd just like to say a few things to you today. First, Indonesia is a country of great economic opportunities. It's the fourth largest country in the entire world. Its economic growth rate is greater than 6% and looks likely to stay high for the years to come. One major American consulting company has just come out with a report predicting that Indonesia's economy will be bigger than that of Germany in the next 15 years. I think that's amazing and not something that very many Americans know about it. So with that growth rate and that potential comes lots of opportunities for business. Consumer demand here is growing very rapidly, so that's a very good sector. The government's predicting or estimating that it will need $500 billion worth of investment in infrastructure in the next decade. So that's another area of huge opportunity. We at the Embassy are very focused on promoting U.S. exports and investment in Indonesia. We have a very strong economic, commercial, and agricultural team devoted to working with U.S. companies to help you succeed here in Indonesia. Now, Indonesia is not the sort of place where you can do business from afar. You really need to come here, meet people, develop the relationships, and learn the lay of the land. And we can help you do that. Our team can help you meet with both government officials and Indonesian counterparts in the business community and help you find good partners or distributors or whatever you may need. But step number one, I would say, is to get on the plane and come out here. We'd love to see even more trade missions from St. Louis, from the state of Missouri. We've had a few, and they've been very successful. We'd love to have more of you come out and take advantage of the opportunities here. So thank you very much, and my apologies again for not being with you today.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Carouso.
Good afternoon. It's nothing like your boss setting you up for failure by saying, oh, he knows a lot, he'll tell you everything you need to know. Ambassador Marcial really did want to be here, not only because he is a passionate supporter of American business, but because he feels Kit Bond is the epitome of the politician diplomat. He was single-handedly responsible for some of our relationships in Indonesia over years and years. And he said, anything Kit Bond needs, you do for him. So, Senator, this is for you. As well as the World Trade Center. This mission in January was one of the most successful we've had. The bad news about that is we've had so few. And my job here today is to explain to you why the opportunities in Indonesia are so vast that you really should try and think about pursuing some of those opportunities over there. So first, why does Indonesia matter? All right, strictly by the numbers. Fourth largest country by population in the world. Third largest democracy. By far the largest Muslim majority nation in the world. Rich in gold, copper, tin, palm oil, cocoa, coffee. Why do you think they call it Java? It is a rich country with huge potential. And it's also made the transition from an authoritarian government to a full-throated democracy with regular elections, a free press, and an example for what's going on in some other Muslim-majority countries these days. And this was by no means preordained. In the midst of the 1997 economic crisis in Asia, they went through simultaneously the equivalent of the Great Depression. Their GDP fell over 10% in 1 year. They had 3 civil wars simultaneously in 3 of the far-flung islands. And they were going through a political transition where they overthrew the old regime, the authoritarian regime, and instituted a democracy. Can you imagine all those things simultaneously? And we in Washington at the State Department were saying, is this going to be the next Yugoslavia, only on a much bigger scale? And look where we are now. For the past, 10 years, they've been growing at better than 6%. Even in 2008, after the Lehman Brothers meltdown, Indonesia grew 4.5%. And they're still on track to continue growing like that. They're going to have elections in 2014, and no one knows who's going to win, which of course is a great thing that no one knows who's going to win, because it means there's a real democracy. But I want to focus with you today on the economic situation and why that means an opportunity for American business. After they came out of this financial crisis, where basically the whole country was flat on its back because the rupiah, their currency, went from about 2,300 to the dollar to 12,000 to the dollar in a matter of a few years. And all sorts of companies and even government borrowed in dollars in the belief that there was a more or less fixed exchange rate. So you can imagine, suddenly everyone's debt goes up 6 times, and you have no income coming in, and the country's falling apart. They got together, they restructured their debts, government, corporate, personal, and they did that at the same time, fortunately, as the commodity cycle started booming. So their palm oil exports and coal and everything else started going up in price as China was sucking in all these commodities, providing a huge market for them. And because they had very little debt after the restructuring, they were able to slowly build it up, and people who hadn't spent any money for years suddenly started feeling confident. And you had this consumer cycle, so we had a virtual circle of high commodity prices feeding confidence, which fed consumer demand. So now the Indonesian economy, GDP, is 60% based on consumer demand. Unfortunately, there are not a lot of American companies there selling those consumer products. And again, we want to change that, with your help, of course. The ambassador mentioned the $500 billion that Indonesia is currently planning to invest in infrastructure. The downside of this period of playing it so safe is they haven't invested in the infrastructure they need to feed this growing economy. So an airport that was built to handle 12 million passengers handles almost 50 million. If you want to see real traffic, go to Indonesia. Jakarta, they have what they call rubber time, meaning you never know when you're going to arrive at an appointment, you just have to take it on faith you'll be there eventually. The ports can't handle all the huge increase in imports and exports. Electricity demand is far outpacing supply, because of course now people are buying TVs and refrigerators, they're sucking in all this power that they haven't invested in new generating capacity. So when the ambassador and I look at all these demands and the plans for Indonesia to develop those, we say, where are the American companies that can give all these resources and technology and know-how? Because the other big secret in Indonesia is they like us. Yeah, they may have issues with us about, for instance, this recent movie, but in fact, they admire our technology, our directness, our way of doing business. The fact that we don't pay bribes, even though there's way too much demand for bribes, they honestly look at us as being occupying a higher moral ground, a lot of folks. And we use that to our advantage. Right now, we have a former federal prosecutor going around Indonesia talking to the press and members of parliament about the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and why, if an Indonesian company or business or government gives a contract to an American company, they can be confident they won't be accused of awarding that contract on the basis of corruption because they know the Americans are watching that. And they can feel confident in the quality of the work, and that was awarded on a fair, equitable basis. So I think Senator Bond will tell you, we are truly welcome. We have friends in Indonesia. And the thing is, how do we leverage that friendship? How do we leverage the fact that for years and years we have had one of the largest assistance programs in the world in Indonesia? I mean, it's great that we built waterworks and help with schools, but my job now is to say, okay, we've done all this with you. You know we're trustworthy. You know we do a good job. How about working with our private sector? How about doing bigger things? And so this is what we've done. We've chosen 3 provinces at the embassy, which have been recipients of a lot of our assistance, which have, according to the Asian Development Bank, have higher quality local government than normal, and which have higher than average growth rates for Indonesia, 7 to 8% on a regional basis. And we went out there on a series of missions, getting to know the local leaders, political and business. And we've written a report, which I encourage you to go to on our usembassy.gov website, business tab. And it talks about the commercial opportunities for all of you. And we're going to be leading business missions, not as good as Kit Bond's, we'll do our best. Business missions out there to introduce American businesses to these provincial political and economic leaders and say, all right, what is it you need to get to the next level of economic development? The ports, the airports, the electricity companies. Here are companies, you've had good experience with us, we've looked into you, we know you're good and trustworthy. What can we do together? What's the biggest barrier we have? To be honest, it's the problem of the way we like to do business. If a company sells turbines, they'll go and say, buy our turbine. Someone else sells the boilers. They come in, sells the boilers. Bank comes in a few weeks later and says, everything needs financing. Indonesians are busy folks. They don't like the complication. They like the way the Chinese and the French and the Indians do it, which is, here's a package. Feasibility study, financing, engineering, the whole package, one deal. We met with the CEO and CFO of the electricity monopoly there, and he was flat out. He said, I don't have time to go over each aspect of a deal and put it together. So when you're ready, you Americans, to come up and do a package, you let me know and I'll be all ears. But you know, we don't do business that well together that way. And we've been promoting in Washington this idea of a Team USA approach, where we get the government, Exim Bank, OPIC, Trade Development Agency, our companies, our capital markets, and work all together and present the opportunities to Indonesia. It's slow going because, again, we don't normally do business that way. We're proud individualists. But I think if we can manage to get it together, there'd be huge opportunity. There was also in Washington last week a global infrastructure conference, of which Indonesia was one of 4 target countries, where we brought Indonesian officials responsible for infrastructure in, met with about 80 companies, government officials, and talked about how we can do business with them. In New York, Monday and Tuesday, we had the head of the Indonesian Investment Board, along with President Yudhoyono, and Trade Minister Gita, and the Finance Minister, talking about their desire for U.S. investment, their desire for U.S. trade, right on Wall Street. So they're welcoming us. How do we go and return the welcome? And that's, again, where our embassy and Ambassador Marcial come in. We are there at your service. We are your embassy. You ask us for help, and we are so happy to offer it as much as we can. We have worked with some of the companies in this room, Emerson, Boeing, Orion, and they tell me that we did okay. They may tell you differently. Beyond business, one other thing I wanted to mention. Undersecretary of Commerce Sanchez is also leading a trade mission to Indonesia to focus on infrastructure in November. So anyone interested in going in Indonesia with him, just let us know. Just to broaden the discussion a little bit to the bilateral relationship. As I mentioned, this is a hugely important country on a geostrategic basis, on a political basis, as well as on an growing economic basis. In 2010, President Obama and President Yudhoyono signed what they call a comprehensive partnership agreement. And what this does, it commits our Secretary of State and their foreign minister to meet at least once a year with 6 committees reporting to them on everything from education to defense cooperation to trade and investment, to get into the habit of us working together, of solving our mutual problems together. And when you consider a country of 320 million and a country of 240 million trying to form this form of tight government-to-government relationship and build that out into tight personal relationships and business relationships, it's all moving in the right direction to try and tighten the bonds with this hugely important country. I know I'm the last thing standing between you and going back to your real job, so I'll try and wrap this up. But I want to talk a minute about how honored I am to be here as well, because I'm a true believer in global trade. And this comes from personal experience as well as being an economist. When I was a boy, my family lived in Athens, Greece. This is the mid-60s. And my mother would call her family in New York once a week. My father would be there with a stopwatch, because 3 minutes was equivalent to about $20. After the 3 minutes, then there was another $5 to $6 for each a minute. There was no additional minute. Now, what's the cost of making a phone call now? Skype is free. Internet is free. Communications is such that there is no avoiding competition, because everyone knows what everyone else is doing, somehow or other. When I was a kid, I wanted peanut butter more than anything when I was living in Greece. Couldn't find it. Now, not only can you find it in the shelves of the supermarket, if I really want it, I'd go on the internet, order it, and they FedEx it to my house. There are no barriers to speak of anymore. So we have to accept that global trade is just going to keep increasing. And I would argue it's a good thing, because everywhere I've gone in the world, there is no doubt that US companies are most competitive, imaginative, and able to get things done. But we have to be out there. We have to get the passports, and as everyone has said, you've got to get on the plane and spend the time. You have to drink tea, a lot of tea. But it's worth it, because you make amazing friendships and you get some great business. So I would argue it's worth the investment, and if you don't do it, the competition's going to come here anyway, so you might as well bring it to them. Finally, I'd just like to say again, I'm really honored to be a representative of the United States of America, and I want to work with you to make your business as powerful and successful in Indonesia and anywhere else as it can be. Thank you very much for your time.